The Queen is helped by the Duke of Kent and his sister, Princess Alexandra. She's been doing official duties for 50 years.
The package arrived at Kensington Palace on a Wednesday afternoon with no warning. Catherine was reviewing her schedule when her private secretary brought in an ornate wooden box, the kind used to store precious items that had survived for generations. The return address made her pause. Princess Alexandra. Inside was a handwritten note and a collection of jewelry that took Catherine's breath away. These pieces had belonged to the Queen Mother and had been passed to Alexandra decades ago with specific instructions about their future. What those instructions said, and why Alexandra had chosen this exact moment to honor them by giving everything to Catherine while completely bypassing Camilla, would ignite a firestorm inside the palace that nobody saw coming. The decision was deliberate, pointed, and about to expose divisions within the royal family that had been carefully hidden from public view. Let's get right into it. Princess Alexandra had been sorting through her possessions for months, a task she approached with the methodical precision that had defined her 70-plus years of royal service. Age and health concerns had made her acutely aware of mortality, of the need to ensure her affairs were in order before decisions were taken out of her hands. Among her most treasured belongings were pieces of jewelry that had come to her not through inheritance laws or official channels, but through personal gifts from family members who had trusted her with items of deep sentimental value. The most significant of these pieces had come from the Queen Mother, her aunt, who had given them to Alexandra privately in the years before her death. The Queen Mother had been strategic about her jewelry, understanding that these pieces carried meaning beyond their monetary value. Official items would pass through established channels, becoming part of the Crown's collection, or going to specific individuals according to protocols established over centuries. But she also had personal pieces, items she could dispose of as she wished, and these she distributed carefully to people she believed would appreciate and honor them properly. Alexandra had received several such pieces, along with instructions that were verbal rather than written, private wishes expressed in conversations that only the two of them had been party to. Among these gifts was a stunning sapphire and diamond brooch that had been a favorite of the Queen Mother's, worn to countless events over her long life. There was also a pair of pearl earrings with a particular provenance, having belonged to Queen Mary before passing to the Queen Mother. A bracelet of intricate design, combining emeralds and gold in a pattern that was both delicate and bold. And perhaps most significantly, a tiara that was not part of the official royal collection, but had been privately owned by the Queen Mother, acquired through her own family connections rather than through marriage into the Windsors. These pieces represented not just wealth, but history, connections to women who had shaped the monarchy through war and peace, triumph and scandal. The Queen Mother's instructions to Alexandra had been clear in spirit if not in legal specificity. These pieces were to go eventually to someone who embodied the values and approach to royal duty that the Queen Mother had championed. Someone who understood that being royal was about service rather than status, about connecting with ordinary people rather than maintaining aristocratic distance. The Queen Mother had lived long enough to see the damage that could be done when royals forgot these principles, when they prioritized their own comfort and desires over the needs of the institution and the public. She had strong opinions about who in the family understood this and who did not. Alexandra had watched the family evolve over the decades since the Queen Mother's death, had observed how different members approached their roles and responsibilities. She had seen scandals and triumphs, had witnessed marriages succeed and fail, had formed her own judgments about who truly grasped what it meant to serve. When she looked at the current generation, one person stood out as embodying the qualities the Queen Mother had valued: Catherine. The Princess of Wales had spent years proving herself, endured intense scrutiny with grace, modernized her approach to royal duty while respecting tradition, and consistently prioritized the institution over personal preference. Alexandra believed the Queen Mother would have approved of Catherine enormously and would have wanted her to have these pieces. The decision to give the jewelry to Catherine was not made impulsively. Alexandra consulted with trusted advisors, including her own lawyer, to ensure there were no legal obstacles to transferring the items. Since they had been personal gifts to her rather than part of any official collection, she had the right to dispose of them as she wished. She also consulted with family members whose opinions she valued, carefully feeling out reactions without revealing her final decision. What she discovered was that opinion was divided. Some family members thought the pieces should go to Camilla, the current queen consort, in accordance with traditional hierarchies. Others agreed with Alexandra that Catherine was the more appropriate recipient based on merit and the Queen Mother's likely wishes. The division itself was revealing, exposing underlying tensions about who truly belonged at the center of the modern monarchy. Alexandra made her final decision after much reflection and prayer. She would give the pieces to Catherine, honoring what she believed were the Queen Mother's intentions and her own assessment of who deserved them. But she would do it privately, avoiding the spectacle of a public presentation that might seem calculated to embarrass Camilla. She had the items professionally cleaned and appraised, then carefully packed with documentation about their provenance and significance. She wrote a letter to Catherine explaining the history of each piece, the Queen Mother's connection to them, and why Alexandra believed Catherine should have them. The letter was warm, but also carried an implicit message. You are the future of this family. These pieces represent the best of our past. Honor them by continuing to embody the values they represent. When everything was ready, Alexandra arranged for the package to be delivered directly to Kensington Palace, bypassing official palace channels that might have intercepted it or raised questions. She wanted Catherine to receive the gift privately, so she could process its significance without immediate pressure or scrutiny. What Alexandra did not anticipate, could not have predicted, was how quickly word would leak about the transfer and how explosive the reaction would be once people understood what had happened. A gift that was meant to be a private gesture of confidence and support was about to become a very public statement about power, favor, and the future direction of the monarchy. Catherine opened the box in her private sitting room, away from staff and family, wanting to examine its contents without an audience. When she saw what was inside, she actually gasped. The pieces were breathtaking, each one a work of art that carried decades of history. She carefully picked up the sapphire brooch, feeling its weight in her hand and trying to imagine the Queen Mother wearing it. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, the kind of work that no longer existed in modern jewelry making. Each piece spoke of a different era and aesthetic sensibility, yet all shared a timeless elegance that transcended fashion. Catherine read Alexandra's letter twice, absorbing every word and implication. The letter explained the provenance of each piece with scholarly detail, but it also contained personal reflections about the Queen Mother's character and values. Alexandra wrote about how the Queen Mother had survived bombing raids during World War II while refusing to leave London, about how she had visited wounded soldiers and bombed neighborhoods, about how she had understood that being royal meant being present during hardship rather than retreating to safety and comfort. The parallel to Catherine's own approach was implicit but clear. You understand what she understood. That is why these belong to you. The gift created an immediate dilemma that Catherine recognized even as she appreciated the gesture. These pieces, especially the tiara, were significant enough that their transfer would not go unnoticed. People would ask where they came from, would research their history, and would discover they had belonged to the Queen Mother. Questions would arise about why they had gone to Catherine rather than to Camilla, who, as Queen Consort, might have expected to receive items associated with previous queens. The gift, however well-intentioned, had the potential to create precisely the kind of family tension and public speculation that Catherine had spent years trying to avoid. Her first instinct was to return the pieces to Alexandra with a gracious note explaining that while she was deeply honored, she could not accept items that might cause family discord. But even as she considered this response, Catherine knew it would insult Alexandra, would reject a gesture made with great thought and care. Alexandra was in her 80s, had served the royal family her entire life with quiet dignity, and had chosen to honor Catherine in a profoundly personal way. Refusing that honor felt wrong, even if accepting it might create complications. Catherine sat with the dilemma for hours, turning the jewelry over in her hands, trying to find a path forward that respected both Alexandra's wishes and the delicate dynamics of royal hierarchy. She decided to consult her husband, Prince William, before making any decisions. When he arrived home that evening, She showed him the box and explained what had happened. William's reaction was complex. He understood immediately why Alexandra had given the pieces to Catherine, and agreed that his wife embodied the qualities his great-grandmother had valued. But he also recognized the potential for this to be seen as a slight against his stepmother, a suggestion that Catherine was more deserving of honoring the Queen Mother's legacy than Camilla was. The situation required careful handling to avoid causing unnecessary hurt or triggering conflicts that would serve no productive purpose. William and Kate discussed their options late into the night. They could accept the gift but keep it private, never wearing the pieces publicly to avoid drawing attention. They could inform Camilla directly before rumors reached her, framing it as Alexandra's personal decision that reflected long-standing instructions rather than any contemporary judgment. They could even offer to have some of the pieces placed in the royal collection rather than keeping them personally, though this would somewhat defeat Alexandra's intention. Each option had advantages and drawbacks, and none eliminated the fundamental awkwardness of the situation. The decision was ultimately taken out of their hands when a staff member who had processed the package casually mentioned it to a colleague, unaware of its significance. That colleague mentioned it to someone else, and within 48 hours, whispers were circulating through palace networks about Catherine receiving meaningful jewelry that had bypassed Camilla. The whispers reached a journalist with sources within the palace, and suddenly, Catherine and William were fielding questions about a gift they had hoped to keep quiet. The story was about to break publicly, and they had to decide quickly how to manage the narrative. Catherine chose to be proactive rather than reactive. She called Alexandra directly, thanking her warmly for the gift, and explaining that the story was about to become public. She asked Alexandra if she was comfortable with Catherine releasing a statement explaining the gift's history and Alexandra's reasoning. Alexandra agreed immediately, saying she had nothing to hide and was proud to have given the pieces to someone she believed would honor them properly. With Alexandra's blessing, Catherine worked with the palace communications team to craft a statement that would be released preemptively before tabloids could frame the story in more sensational terms. The statement was carefully worded. It acknowledged that Catherine had received jewelry from Princess Alexandra that had previously belonged to the Queen Mother. It explained that these were personal items that Alexandra had received as private gifts and that she had the right to dispose of them as she wished. It noted that Alexandra had chosen to give them to Catherine in recognition of her dedication to royal service and her embodiment of values the Queen Mother had championed. The statement thanked Alexandra for the generous and meaningful gift. What the statement deliberately did not do was mention Camilla or address why she had not received the pieces. That omission was strategic, intended to keep the focus on the positive gesture rather than on who had been excluded. Camilla learned about the jewelry gift the same way much of the public did, through news reports that appeared online before the palace's official statement was released. She was having tea with friends when her phone started buzzing with messages, people sending her links to articles about Catherine receiving the Queen Mother's private collection. Her initial reaction was confusion. She had not known such a collection existed in Alexandra's possession, had not realized the Queen Mother had distributed personal pieces outside official channels. As she read the details and understood the significance of what had been given to Catherine, confusion gave way to hurt and then to anger. The hurt came from the implicit message that she was not worthy of items associated with the Queen Mother, that despite being Queen Consort, despite years of service, she was somehow less deserving than Catherine. The anger came from learning about it through media reports rather than being informed privately by family members. Whether or not she had any claim to the jewelry, the courtesy of advance notice would have been appreciated. Instead, she felt blindsided and disrespected, treated as an afterthought in a decision that involved items she reasonably might have expected to receive. Camilla's friends tried to be supportive, but their comments only made things worse. They pointed out that the gift seemed like a deliberate snub, that Alexandra must have known how it would be perceived, and that Catherine's acceptance of it showed poor judgment and a lack of consideration for Camilla's feelings. These observations, however well meant, fed Camilla's sense of grievance and made it harder for her to find a generous interpretation of events. By the time the king arrived home that evening, Camilla was fully convinced that she had been intentionally slighted and that something needed to be said or done in response. Charles was caught in an impossible position. He understood his wife's hurt feelings, but also recognized that Alexandra had acted within her rights and that Catherine had done nothing wrong by accepting a gift from an elder family member. He tried to explain to Camilla that the pieces had been Alexandra's personal property to dispose of as she wished, that their transfer to Catherine did not represent any official judgment about Camilla's status or worth. But Camilla was not in the mood to be reasoned with. She felt the slight deeply and wanted acknowledgement of how inappropriate the entire situation was. The argument that followed was one of the more serious disagreements of their marriage. Camilla accused Charles of always defending William and Catherine while dismissing her legitimate concerns. Charles countered that Camilla was making this about herself when it was really about Alexandra honoring the Queen Mother's wishes. Camilla shot back that the Queen Mother's wishes, if they truly existed, were decades old and should not supersede current realities about who actually held the position of queen. The conversation went in circles, both of them entrenched in their positions, neither willing to concede ground. Palace staff who overheard the argument reported that it lasted over an hour and ended with Camilla leaving the room in tears. King Charles, frustrated and exhausted, called William to discuss the situation. Father and son had a frank conversation about how to manage the fallout. William was sympathetic to Camilla's hurt feelings but firm that Catherine had done nothing wrong. The gift had been unsolicited, and refusing it would have been insulting to Alexandra. If anyone had created a problem, it was Alexandra through the timing and method of her gift, though even that was debatable since she had simply honored private instructions from the Queen Mother. Charles suggested that Princess Kate could reach out to Camilla directly, woman to woman, to smooth things over. William agreed this might help, but warned his father that Catherine would not apologize for accepting a gift she had every right to receive. Charles understood but hoped that a conversation might at least reduce the temperature and prevent this from escalating into a prolonged family feud. He asked William to have Catherine call Camilla, and William agreed to discuss it with his wife. Catherine was reluctant when William relayed his father's request. She had not sought this situation, had tried to handle it with appropriate discretion, and did not feel she owed Camilla an apology. But she also understood that family harmony mattered, that prolonged tension between her and the Queen Consort would create problems for everyone. After some internal debate, she agreed to reach out to Camilla. However, she was clear with William that she would express understanding for Camilla's feelings without conceding that anything inappropriate had occurred. The phone call between Catherine and Camilla was tense and awkward. Catherine began by saying she understood the situation must have been surprising and that she hoped Camilla knew there had been no intention to cause hurt. Camilla's response was cool, acknowledging Catherine's words but not really accepting them. She made it clear that she felt the entire matter had been handled poorly and that more consideration should have been given to its impact on her. Catherine listened patiently, then gently but firmly said that she had been given a gift by a senior family member and that it would have been wrong to refuse it. She hoped Camilla could understand that position. The call ended without resolution or genuine reconciliation. Both women had said what they needed to say, but the underlying tension remained. Camilla still felt slighted. Catherine still thought she had done nothing wrong. The divide between them had been exposed and widened by this incident, and it would take more than one awkward phone call to bridge it. Palace officials monitoring the situation recognized that this was not just about jewelry. It was about more profound questions of status, respect, and whose position in the family hierarchy mattered most. Those questions had been simmering beneath the surface for years, and the jewelry gift had brought them into sharp relief. News of the jewelry gift dominated royal coverage for days. Opinion pieces analyzed what it meant, dissected the relationships involved, and speculated about future implications. The public response was sharply divided, reflecting broader divisions about how people viewed different members of the royal family. Those who admired Catherine saw the gift as appropriate recognition of her dedication and grace. Those who supported Camilla saw it as a slight that revealed ongoing bias against the Queen Consort. and those who were skeptical of monarchy generally saw the entire situation as evidence of the institution's petty, dysfunctional nature. Royal commentators filled hours of television time discussing the nuances. Some pointed out that Catherine represented the future of the monarchy, while Camilla's time in the spotlight was necessarily limited by age. From that perspective, giving significant pieces to Catherine made strategic sense, ensuring they would be worn and appreciated for decades to come. Others argued that protocol and hierarchy mattered, that the queen consort should have priority over items associated with previous queens, regardless of personal merit or future projections. The debate became a proxy for larger arguments about whether the monarchy should be based on tradition or modernization, on hereditary status or earned respect. Social media was predictably brutal and reductive. Hashtags emerged supporting various positions. Team Catherine versus Team Camilla trending battles played out daily. Memes were created. Nasty comments proliferated. The jewelry, which had been given as a private gesture of respect, became a symbol that different factions used to advance their preferred narratives about the royal family. Catherine's supporters portrayed her as the rightful inheritor of the Queen Mother's legacy, someone who embodied duty and service in ways that Camilla never would. Camilla's defenders portrayed Catherine as calculating and willing to accept honors that should have gone to her mother-in-law, revealing her true ambition beneath the carefully cultivated modesty. The intensity of public reaction took everyone by surprise. Palace officials had expected some interest in the story, but had not anticipated it becoming such a cultural flashpoint. Focus groups and polls were conducted to gauge public sentiment, and the results were troubling for those hoping for clear support for either woman. The public was genuinely split, with opinions breaking down largely along generational and attitudinal lines. Younger people tended to support Catherine. Older people were more likely to help Camilla. People who wanted the monarchy to modernize backed Catherine. People who valued tradition backed Camilla. The divide was less about the individuals involved and more about what they represented in people's minds. Alexandra watched this circus unfold with growing distress. She had not intended to create such controversy. Her goal had been to honor the Queen Mother's wishes and recognize someone she believed deserved recognition. The idea that her gesture would be weaponized in public battles over who was more worthy or important had never occurred to her. She considered releasing a statement to clarify her intentions and reduce tensions, but her advisors counseled against it. Anything she said now would be picked apart and used by various sides to support their predetermined positions. Better to let the controversy burn itself out than to add more fuel to the fire. Catherine found the whole situation exhausting and dispiriting. She had spent years trying to stay out of controversy, focusing on her work rather than palace intrigue. Now she was at the center of a firestorm she had not created and could not control. She stopped reading news coverage and social media commentary, recognizing that engaging with it would only make her feel worse. Instead, she focused on her duties, on the projects and patronages that actually mattered. She attended events, met with organizations, and did the work of being Princess of Wales while trying to ignore the noise surrounding the jewelry controversy. William was protective of his wife and frustrated by what he saw as manufactured drama. In private conversations with palace officials, he made clear that he expected them to defend Catherine from unfair attacks and to push back against narratives suggesting she had done anything inappropriate. Some officials were willing to do this. Others were more cautious, not wanting to be seen as taking sides in what was increasingly being framed as a conflict between Catherine and Camilla. The reluctance to fully support Catherine angered William, but he also understood the political calculations at play. Palace officials served the institution, and sometimes that meant not backing any individual member too strongly when controversies arose. Charles tried to stay above the fray publicly while working behind the scenes to calm tensions. He spoke with media contacts, encouraging them to move on to other stories. He spoke with family members, asking everyone to dial down the rhetoric and avoid saying anything that would prolong the controversy. He particularly focused on ensuring that no one in Camilla's circle made statements that would be seen as attacking Catherine, recognizing that such attacks would backfire and make Camilla look petty. Gradually, through these efforts, the intensity of coverage began to diminish. 6 months after the initial gift, the dust had settled mainly on the public controversy, but the private impact continued rippling through the family. Relationships had been tested and, in some cases, permanently altered by how people had reacted to the situation. Catherine and Camilla maintained a cordial but distant relationship, speaking when necessary at family events, but no longer making efforts to build genuine warmth or connection. The ease that had existed between them before, never close but at least friendly, was gone. Both women were professional enough to hide this from public view, but people who knew them well could see the change. Princess Alexandra, reflecting on what her gift had unleashed, had mixed feelings. She stood by her decision and believed it had been the right thing to do, but she regretted the pain it had caused and the way others had used it for purposes she had never intended. She reached out to both Catherine and Camilla separately, writing letters that acknowledged the difficulty of the situation and expressed her hope that time would heal whatever wounds had been opened. Catherine responded with genuine warmth and gratitude. Camilla's response was polite but noticeably cooler, leaving Alexandra sad but unsurprised. The jewelry itself remained in Catherine's possession, carefully stored and occasionally worn to events where its appearance would be appropriate and meaningful. Each time Catherine wore one of the pieces, she thought about the Queen Mother and about Alexandra's faith in her. The items became more than just beautiful objects. They were reminders of the standards she was expected to uphold, of the legacy she was being trusted to continue. Catherine took that responsibility seriously, using the pieces as motivation to ensure her work and conduct honored the confidence placed in her. Within palace circles, the controversy had revealed fractures that had existed beneath the surface but had been carefully papered over. There were clear camps now, people who were Team Cambridge and people who were Team Cornwall, the old titles that still defined the two couples in many minds. These camps influenced decisions about staffing, about event planning, and about who received what kind of support from institutional resources. The divisions were not open warfare, but they created inefficiencies and tensions that made palace operations less smooth than they should have been. Senior officials who tried to remain neutral found themselves suspected by both camps of secretly favoring the other. King Charles attempted to address these divisions through a series of family meetings aimed at clearing the air and improving communication. The meetings were awkward and sometimes heated, with grievances that went far beyond jewelry. Camilla expressed feeling that she was constantly unfavorably compared to Diana and now to Catherine, and that she was never entirely accepted as Charles's legitimate partner and queen. Catherine spoke about the pressure of constantly having to prove herself worthy while being scrutinized for every decision and criticized no matter what she did. William talked about protecting his wife and children from an institution that sometimes seemed more interested in maintaining appearances than in supporting the people who served it. These conversations were painful, but also somewhat cathartic. Simply acknowledging tensions that everyone had been pretending did not exist created space for them to be managed more constructively. Charles emerged from the meetings with a clearer understanding of the challenges different family members faced and a renewed commitment to being fairer in how he balanced competing needs and interests. He could not solve all the problems or make everyone feel equally valued and supported, but he could try to be more aware and responsive. It was a start, if an imperfect one. The broader lesson that emerged from the jewelry controversy was that symbolic gestures, even when well-intentioned, could have unintended consequences within an institution as complex and scrutinized as the monarchy. Alexandra's gift had been meant to honor Catherine privately, but had become a public statement about hierarchy and worth. Future decisions about family heirlooms and personal gifts would be made with greater awareness of how they might be perceived and what divisions they might expose or create. Some spontaneity and personal gesture were lost in this increased caution, but the alternative of repeated public controversies seemed worse. Years later, when historians examined this period of the monarchy, the jewelry incident would be cited as an example of the tensions inherent in an institution trying to modernize while respecting tradition, trying to honor hierarchy while rewarding merit, and satisfying public expectations while managing private family dynamics. The incident itself was relatively minor in the grand scheme of royal history, but it illuminated larger challenges that the monarchy would continue grappling with as it navigated an uncertain future. Catherine kept Alexandra's letter in a private safe, occasionally rereading it when she needed reminding of why her work mattered and what values she was meant to embody. The Queen Mother's jewelry, beautiful as it was, remained less important to her than the message the gift had conveyed. Someone who had served the crown with distinction for decades believed Catherine was doing the same, thought she was worthy of carrying forward a legacy that stretched back generations. That vote of confidence meant more than any physical object could, and Catherine tried every day to live up to it. Whether she succeeded was for history to judge, but she never stopped trying. That is the complete inside story of the jewelry gift that exposed royal family divisions and sparked a battle over legacy, hierarchy, and who truly deserves to inherit the symbols of the monarchy's past. The tensions it revealed are still shaping relationships and decisions behind palace walls today. If this deep dive into royal family dynamics fascinated you as much as it did us, you absolutely need to hit that like button and subscribe right now. We uncover the stories that others miss, the secrets that explain what you see in public, the truth that changes everything. More explosive revelations about the royals are coming very soon, stories that will shock you and make you question everything you thought you knew. Do not miss a single episode. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us as we continue exposing what really happens when the palace doors close and the cameras turn off. The truth is waiting.